Hey, welcome back everyone, Onions here to another Borderlands 4 video. Today we're going to review what Gearbox has been cooking in the kitchen with the latest DLC drop where we get 4 new legendary guns, and specifically we're going to be talking about the Rooker legendary sniper rifle from Order, and we're going to be seeing why it is the absolute boss melter, why it is the best gun in the game right now, second to the spread launcher. Gearbox has launched its first DLC for Borderlands 4 since release. It is the holiday event stuff, and today we're going to be looking at the Rooker. I already said that, but we're going to be seeing why it's actually the best gun in the game period right now of all the legendary guns that make killing the bosses so much easier and so much less work. So if you're farming legendaries from, I don't know, the 3 vaults, you are in good luck. Let's take a look at the text. It says Callus fires 2 needles that continuously home in on enemies you are aiming at. Sounds pretty basic until you realize that it actually works like the Stellium with the beam tosser. The beam tosser is a projectile that moves through space, and as long as it's touching or going through an enemy, it does damage, which basically stacks, not even per second, per millisecond, or whatever the stacking is. Well, the Rooker does the exact same thing, but it fires 2 needles, and what's important about it is that it is homing, which means that as long as you're looking at your enemy, those needles surround themselves around the enemy and go in circles, which means that they will do continuous DPS. Unlike the Stellium, where the beam will pass through the enemy and continue onward until it hits an obstacle in the background to bounce off of, which makes this kind of really good if the enemy is really large, like the back hive. It makes it very difficult to use when it comes to smaller targets. This, on the other hand, as long as you're looking at the enemy, for example, you're looking at Axmal, he moves around a lot, so if you're using this, the darts will actually home directly on Axmal. You understand the picture basically. It homes to wherever you're looking, and that is the reason it does a lot of DPS, because it's constantly crossing through an enemy, impacting them. When you put that together with, of course, the basic, the amp shield, it amplifies the shot by 200%, which multiplies the damage basically by 2, and this continuously does damage as long as it's hitting the enemy, so it's basically amped the entire time. And then you pair it up with a sequencer where the guns with Jacob's licensed parts grant consecutive critical hits, stacking 5% bonus damage for a maximum of 8 stacks. So as long as it keeps passing through the enemy and causing critical hits, which with the Vex build that I have will most likely give you critical hits, which is paired with the throwing knife even further, which guarantees critical hits. If you throw 3 knives, you got 90% chance, you're almost guaranteed a critical hit there. Yes, so it also receives bonuses from gun damage, it gets bonuses from critical hit gun damage. It basically stacks a ton of damage. Then we pair it with the Teen Witch, of course, for the infinite shield amp. I have the 100% gun damage What's for Dinner shield, and then that will get buffed up by the basically infinite damage, and it will never run out of shield, which will continue amping the shot. And then I think I missed the most important part. If you roll this gun with a Jacob licensed accessories, critical hits will ricochet projectiles to nearby enemies, which means that it will spawn an additional dart or needle that will go around and hover back to the enemy. These dummies are actually relatively small when it comes to hitting them, but you can still aim and get them to get hit by the needle. So let's shoot it and you'll see what I mean. So it'll start circling, and then critical hits will start stacking damage, and then every time it gets a critical hit, a new needle will spawn, and as you can tell, it will continue doing this until the last needle despawns. That was a ton of damage in one go, and you can repeat this if you have more than one. So also, something I noticed is that if you do shoot the needle and you swap to another gun, the needle still exists. So I'm gonna shoot this one, and I'm gonna swap to another gun. You can see the needles are still bouncing around, and there's 4 of them, and the skill says that only spawns 2, and that's because we got a critical hit on the target. And when you get a critical hit on the target, it spawns a new needle that will continue its life and last for quite a good time. Bundle all of that together with a giant target like Origo, like Radix, then you understand that everything comes together and just does a ton of damage. And like I said, it is very similar like the Beam Splitter, but the Beam Splitter is basically uncontrollable, whereas if you shoot the needle, it homes, which does damage on target and will continue doing so. Right now you can see it's proccing some critical hits, and when it procs a critical hit, another one spawns. That's because of my Vex skill tree. If we go into my skill and we look here, you can see that I have critical hits activate kill skills, and my kill skill is that Vex's gun damage gains critical hit against any part, and then also skill damage gains critical hit chance against any part, which means that my critical hits have a chance to activate the gun's special effect, which will spawn a new needle, and that needle will continue doing damage. I have tested this against a bunch of other enemies, and honestly, I don't see a reason to use the spread launcher anymore. As nice as it is, as powerful as it is, these needles are just so much more fun to use, and they do a ton of damage. One shot can take down the boss. That's pretty much all there is to it. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll see you on the next one.